You are listening to the Hire Fast podcast. In today's episode, I want to talk about the 8 qualities of destructive employees. The new candidate that says, I'm perfect. They know everything. I've done everything. I never call out. I'm never late. And they portray themselves as the best thing since sliced bread. The hire isn't always what you think you got, but when you find out the truth, it's too late. Okay, let's get into it.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Hire Fast podcast, a podcast aimed at educating you on hiring the right person for the right job and keeping them. Are you sick of spending precious time and energy hiring and training people just to have them turn around and quit? Then join Alan and his guests on Hire Fast as they teach you how to skillfully motivate and attract rock star talent. Now here is your host, Alan Daviduk.
Thank you for joining me on the Hire Fast podcast. So today I want to talk about some protection, some things we got to pay attention to protect ourselves. So when it comes to managing our best people, we have to attract the best people that we can, right? And then we have to develop them into producers, the producers that we need them to be. And then we need to engage them so they continue to perform over and over again. And if we can create the right culture, the culture where they want to come to work, they can't wait to get to work, right? Then the last thing that we have to do is build an environment that challenges them, rewards them, and keeps them accountable. And that way, that engagement, we can retain them and we can protect ourselves every day from the threat of people trying to steal our best employees, right? That's a super way that companies now are coming in and they let you do all the work and then they take your best people. But there's a dark threat out there, right? One of the real big problems that we face as business owners, restaurant owners, and we have to be very good at identifying the liars that are out there. We have to be really good at identifying the scam artists that are out there. And we have to be real good at holding people accountable, right? And a lot of us say that we do this, but we don't really do it. Are you good at doing this? Or are you scared to have that hard conversation with people, right? And also, are you not willing to take the criticism, right? And this is something that I had to open up to, and I had to kind of unlearn that anytime anybody would say anything to me, I'd put up a wall, right? So, we need to really be able to identify that quickly, that wolf in sheep's clothing, that sometimes a new hire, a new candidate, or sometimes our current employees are. There's an old saying, right, that, sometimes it takes a little while, but then the skeleton falls out of the closet, right? And it is what it is. We have a lot of terrible employees, right? And these terrible employees, they cause problems, but they don't really hide who they are, right? They're incompetent, they're lazy, they're inconsistent, right? All that kind of stuff. And it sucks, right? It's painful, but you can spot them pretty easily, right? But what about the employee who comes in and says all the right things, right? That's a deadly person, right? This person appears that they're doing a good job right out of the gate, right from the start, when really they're like this cancer that's brewing, right, just waiting to expose itself, right? They slowly destroy the people around them. They cause chaos kind of in the shadows. They destroy other people's performance, right? They destroy the morale and the culture that you've been fighting so hard to build in your restaurant, right? And they create attitudes and they pit people against each other. And sometimes they don't even know that they're doing it. It's just who they are, right? These people are the silent killers. These are the people that we have to protect ourselves from. These are the ones that when we turn our backs around, they're actually kind of stabbing us over and over again. Again, it's just who they are, right? Then they look at you when you try to confront them and they look at you like they've done nothing wrong, right? They're like, well, I didn't cause any of that chaos, but it's just the comments that they make, the way that they carry themselves, the things that they do, right? And then what happens, right? They cause all this chaos and this drama and this destruction, and then they just get up and move on, right? They go down the street to the guy that's next in line that's desperate because he needs some help, right? And he's not going to call you to find out, to get a reference from you, right? He's going to think, oh man, I got a good one. But what he doesn't know is what we already know, right? What we just had to pay a ton of money to find out, right? And then the cycle continues. The cycle continues. My mom used to tell this story. She really fought hard years ago to try to get friendly with all the business owners up and down the road. And she used to say to the other business owners as kind of like her icebreaker, like, listen, we need to, talk to each other because what we're doing is we're shoveling people up and down the road, right? And they're constantly hopping from place to place to place, and they're leaving all this destruction in their wake, right? This is why I created the SMART system. I created the SMART system to defeat these people, right? To take the control back from these people, to quickly expose these people, to show up, to stick a mirror in front of these people's face and say, hey, these are the things you're doing, and it needs to stop now, right? So let's talk about the 8 qualities that we must identify and address ASAP, right away, right? But I just first want to thank a lot of the content I'm going to talk about today that I read in an article in Inc. magazine. This was the catalyst for this podcast episode, and it was written by a guy named Jeff Hayden. So, the 8 qualities of destructive employees. The first one, they say, that's not my job. Oh, man, does that drive me nuts, right? These people are super cancerous. In the restaurant world, you have to do multiple things, period. Right? You don't just stand and like, you're a machinist and you just like pull the handle. That's not how it works in the restaurant world. You have to be floating around. You have to multitask, especially if you're a small company, right? And that's why it's super important as bosses that we're out there doing tasks, right? I remember my dad one time, my dad ran a chain of restaurants this is going to age me, but it was called York Steakhouse. So if you remember that restaurant, you must be older. But I remember one day my dad had 5 new hires. It was a very big restaurant. He had 5 new hires, and he said to me, come on, Alan, we got to go do something with the new candidates. And he lined the new candidates all up outside the bathroom. And he propped the door open. My dad used to have this thing where he'd take his tie and he'd like shove it in his shirt. And he made me and him clean the bathroom, top to bottom, floor to ceiling. Went through the whole, and pretty big bathrooms. They had like 3 urinals and 5 stalls, and then he comes out and he says to the new candidates, you just watched me and my son clean the bathroom. So now when I ask you to clean the bathroom, you know that I am willing to clean the bathroom, and that's how it has to be done. And he walked away, right? But that's huge, right? This is what we have to do as boss. So any task that you ask an employee to do, just as long as it's not unethical or illegal or immoral, they should be willing to do, or they need to go, right? You don't tell anybody to do anything that you haven't already done yourself. I remember this one time I had this lady, she worked for me and then she left, and then a couple weeks later she wanted to come back. So I sat her down and I said, well, what happened? Why wasn't the grass greener? She went to work for Papagino's. And she said to me, oh, they made me cut up peppers and onions and tomatoes and all this stuff, right? And I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen when you signed up to work for a pizza restaurant? What did you think you were going to do, transmissions? This is how people think, right? They just don't want to do certain things. There's things that aren't my job, right? So if you're saying it's not my job, that really means that you only care about yourself, right? And you don't care about anybody else. So quality number 2, they think they've paid their dues, right? People will say to you things like, oh, I've worked here for 2 years. Okay, well, that's great. I don't know what that means. You made it 2 years. Well, you want to talk about all the mistakes you made? You want to talk about all the things you dropped on the floor? You want to talk about all the customers you pissed off? Do you want to talk about how many times you were late or called in or cost me money, right? Or things that you broke? Oh, so if you get to talk about all the years you've been here, then I should be able to talk about all that stuff, right? That's the stuff that no one wants to hear about, right? But shouldn't that offset it? So listen, now that you've worked here for 2 years, we have a relationship. Right? That's really all it means, right? My landlord does not care that I paid the rent on time for a year. He only cares that I pay the rent this month on time and next month on time. And then I do it the month after that. The last year that I paid the rent on time, oh, that's nice. Yay, golf clap, right? He doesn't give a shit, right? He just wants the rent to be paid over and over again. That's the world we live in, guys, right? And how about these people that say things like, well, I do everything, right? Okay, you do everything. I don't know if that's true. I remember in the old days, in the Dunkin' days, all the bakers, when we used to actually hand make the donuts, the bakers would say, I do everything, right? Because they did something that's very tangible, right? People that are in the service business, there's nothing tangible to grab onto. You take care of customers all day, you do things, but when you step back, you don't really have anything there that you created, right? So bakers would make a bunch of donuts, and there's like donuts all over the place, so they get to sit back and go, wow, look at all the stuff I just produced, right? So in their mind, they'd say, oh, I did everything. Well, what would happen is they would leave, they would go start their own business if they could put together enough money to go start their own business, and then they'd get punched right in the face because what happened was they had an employee mindset. They would go hide in the back and make donuts because that's what they did. And then they'd really quickly realize that making the donuts was one spoke in the wheel of the business, right? You have to get the money to the bank. You have to do orders. You have to do payroll. You have to hire. There was all this other stuff. You have to do accounting. And there's all this other stuff that they couldn't do because all they were was a donut maker, right? So really quickly they learned what everything really, really means when they went out of business and went broke, right? And lost everything that they had. So the only thing that matters is that you keep doing things and you continue to do them over and over again. Last year doesn't matter. I mean, I think it's great that you've got some tenure, but it doesn't really matter. The new customer only cares about themselves getting taken care of right now, right? That's the standard today. So saying I've paid my dues is like saying, well, I don't need to work hard anymore, right? That's not right. So the next thing you know, every other employee in the business says that they do everything too. So you got to be very careful here. So another quality is they think their experience is a tangible commodity, right? So I remember this one employee came to me, that they, a new hire, and they said, I've worked at 10 different places, right? 10 different donut shops. I'm like, well, if you said to me you worked at one donut shop for 10 years, that would mean more to me than you working at 10 different places, right? The fact that you stop telling me what I want to hear, right? And just tell me what you've done, right? So, and then how about the people that say, well, I've done this and I've done that and I've done all these other things. Okay, well, that's awesome, but you haven't done anything for me, right? So this is the problem when we're interviewing candidates, right? They want to boast themselves, but really you've done nothing for me. I'm supposed to make a decision on everything that you've done for someone else that you feel you don't have to do anymore. I don't know, right? So experience is important, but it doesn't always translate into skills, right? So sometimes it just means that you have bad habits. Oh, that's another way of looking at it, right? It could mean that you're set in your ways, that you're going to be a problem for me, right? Old dogs don't always learn new tricks. So, if your experience, that experience that you have that you're boasting, can't translate into better skills and better performance, greater achievements, guess what? It's worthless. It means nothing, right? So saying I have more experience is like saying I'm set in my ways and I'm not willing to change. So, destructive quality number 4. They lead the conversation after the conversation. Now, what I mean by that is, and these people, you have a communication, you have to talk to the team about something, right? And the person yeses you to death, right? And then they turn around, they start running their mouth to everybody else about everything they don't like. Well, I'm not doing that, and that's stupid. But you had the floor, right? You had the moment to say what you like and didn't like, or what you think is right or wrong, but then you were too chicken shit to say something and share, right? The person is now behind your back saying things like, well, I'm not doing that. Right? I remember one time my wife, all week, she complained about her leg and her hip and her ass and her elbow and her head and her this and her that, right? So she schedules an appointment for the doctor. She asked me to go with her. Now I'm sitting in the room. She's going over stuff with the doctor, and the doctor says to her, well, is there anything else that you want to tell me before I have to go grab something and I'll be right back? And I'm waiting. I'm like, here we go. Give them the list, the list that you've been bitching at me about for the whole week. And what does she say? No, everything's good. And I'm like, whoa, stop. All week you said your ass and your elbow and your knee and your head and all that. Right now's the time. But see, right there in that moment, she complained all week. And then when she had the moment, the person in front of her that's going to help her, she said nothing, right? That's this person right here. I love my wife, but she's this person in this moment, right? So I've created an environment where I want people to tell me what they think, good or bad, right? There's no recourse. Just tell me, right? The reason I'm asking you is because I need to see what I don't see, right? So saying after the fact that you don't like something, you think it's stupid, is like saying, well, I agree with you, but I'm not going to do it anyway, right? These people need to go. They're cancerous, right? And they're going to cause issues for you over and over again. All right, quality number 5. They feast on gossip. Oh, these people, right? If you got something to say about someone, the person should be in the room. And anytime anybody comes to me and they start, complaining about someone, I stop them. And I either if the person's in the restaurant, I get that person to come over, or I call the person. Because what happens is the story usually changes when the two people are facing each other. People have like this, they feel like, they have this sense of, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they just have more confidence to complain about stuff when the person that they're complaining about isn't standing in front of them. The whole thing changes when the person's standing in front of them. So I feel that, listen, if you're going to complain about someone else, the person should be right there with you, facing you, right? You should face your accuser. So these people waste a lot of time and energy, right? They diminish the respect, right? So, and then it'll really shock you, because this is something that really always kind of hits me, like sideways, that sometimes some of your best people are doing this, right? The people that you're depending on, they're doing this, right? So everybody's got something to work on, right? So in this particular case, one of your best people, but this may be one bad habit that they got to work on, right? So in our culture of care, we have a section that actually takes compensation away from people for something that we call negative speak, right? So you have to make a commitment to the culture. So that's why I make it part of people's compensation. I don't want this shit talked about in my restaurant, so I'm going to tie it to the way I pay you, right? That's making a commitment to your culture, right? I don't want to get bit later by it, so I make it part of the compensation. So saying, did you hear what they did? This kind of talk, right? It's like saying, I have nothing better to do in my life other than to talk about other people. Oh, Siri's jumping in on us here. So quality of destructive employees, number 6. They use peer pressure to hold others back, right? An employee is working hard. She's busting her hump to create value, right? To show how much she cares about what she's doing. And another employee walks up to her and says, hey, why are you working so hard? You're making us look bad. Has this ever happened to you? Right? Or have you ever seen this in your environment? This is what entitled people do, right? This is why when the government steps in and demands that people make higher pay rates, people that don't deserve it, they're not capable of actually earning that kind of money, but only because the government said you had to pay them, this is what this causes, right? And it's not fair. The people that work hard, they should be rewarded, not the people who don't, right? And you can fight back against this with the SMART system. This is why we created all of the tools that we created to help with this exact thing, because this thing used to piss me off more than anything, right? So this is why compensation needs to be individual, right? It needs to be about production and availability, right? That's how you sort everybody out. So the busybodies who are worried about what everybody else is doing and what everybody else is making, they're asking the wrong questions, right? So you have to have a system in place to say, hey, man, you're asking the wrong questions, right? What's the right question? Well, instead of worrying about everybody else, you should be asking, what do I need to do, right? What changes do I need to make, right? What things do I have to unlearn so I can get what I want, so I can be in the same category as everybody else? Oh, see, now that's like next level stuff, right? When you get people to make changes themselves, right? Instead of us just trying to pound them all the time to change. That's why it has to be tied to compensation. If you don't, that's the game that they're playing, so we have to play the same game, right? So saying that you're working too hard, right, is like saying no one should work hard because I'm lazy and I don't want to work hard, right? And I'm unwilling to do what's required to improve myself. That's really what you're saying. So number 7, they rush to grab glory, right? I did this and we, instead of we did this. Right? Nothing important is ever accomplished alone, right? A lot of people, they love to act this way, right? But I don't know, maybe they were abused mentally or something when they were a kid and they were told that they never did anything, they weren't good enough, right? So now they have to always tell people, hey, look what I did. Look at me, look at I just did all this, right? How many people do you know like this? They constantly tell you everything that they did all day. The first thing that they tell you is the 10 things that they did, right? Now, it doesn't matter that you've done triple what they've done, right? But, when this happens to me, I don't get into this tit for tat. It's just not worth it, right? I don't want to get sucked in and then have this, kind of pissing contest. I don't want to do that. I remember one time, a couple weeks ago, this actually happened at the restaurant. Someone was doing this, and my daughter, her name's Autumn, actually looked at them and went, who hurt you? Who hurt you? And I laughed so hard I had to share that with you today. So saying I did all the work, right, is like saying that the world revolves around me, right? So, but look for an employee that shares the glory, right? People that say they give other people affirmations. Hey, great job, right? These are your next leaders. They're sitting right in front of you. All you have to do is identify them. So number 8, they rush to throw others under the bus, right? It doesn't matter what happens. It's always someone else's fault, right? The customer, and we're in the coffee and donut business, so the customer gets the wrong coffee made. Oh, well, I didn't do it. Who gives a shit? Just fix the coffee, right? It doesn't matter who made the wrong coffee or who put the wrong lid on or whatever it is. Just fix it, right? That adage that the customer's always right, it's not true, but it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, you got to fix it. Great companies are defined by how they fix it, not by the error that's made. It's how they handle it, right? So has to be part of the culture and environment, right? But this is a bad one because a lot of people, they put up that wall, right? It's like this ego thing. I don't understand it. But now think about the people, though, who go the other way, right? They fix the issue regardless of whose fault it is, right? They see the importance of just take care of it, man. These are your future rock stars, right? So saying I didn't do it is like saying that we're not a team, right? We're not in this together, right? So look out for this. If you see this type of culture in different companies, a company with a great culture, everyone's in it together, right? We're a team. It doesn't matter who made a mistake. We just fix it. So that's all I got for you today. So thank you so much for listening today. If you haven't clicked subscribe or follow, please do so below so I can keep you up to date with how to hire fast. Ciao for now.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.